Good evening, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, we're going to be exploring this idea or this concept that I have been thinking about for a couple years now. And one of the things to go into this conversation that I would think would be very helpful for anyone listening to this is to to hold strong convictions or beliefs loosely. What I mean by that is to not be so attached to what you think you already know. And I get it can be very challenging for people. Excuse me. And in that, you're giving up something that maybe a big part of your identity is wrapped around. And the belief that we're going to be talking about tonight, or that we're going to be kind of exploring, is if men got their shit together, the world would be solved. And it's a pretty big statement. I understand that. And I want to break down when I say their shit together, what does that mean? What is my interpretation of that? And I encourage, especially if women are watching this, to not come at it from a place of, yes, it's all the men's fault, they need to figure out their shit, we're fine. Because as long as you keep approaching, and this goes for men as well, as long as you keep approaching topics like this with that mentality, you are staying in that same sphere of belief systems and this or that, them, us, it's divided still. Instead of a much better, Kaz just gallivanting around, I believe a much better approach is, okay, why would that fix everything? Like, let's actually think about that for a minute. And honestly, the women's version of this, which we'll get into at a different time, there's just as much on their side. Because if men actually do the things I'm going to talk about tonight, then it will, by default, call the women forward. And the last few videos I've made have been a little bit shorter. And I've realized that some of these things I think are going to be very difficult to talk about in 20 minutes. And another kind of prerequisite to this video and the ones going forward is taking an idea like we are tonight and thinking about it for an hour or so, or however long it feels alive. Because I've realized that if I come to something like this with a very specific plan, like I have a plan right now in my head on a felt sense, but I don't have notes. I'm not going off of a script. And that feels very important for me and I think for people watching, because you can then realize, like, okay, trust what's meant to come forward, right? And be a host of information or of art. I believe art is designed to be hosted. And even this process of me making these videos, this is part of me figuring out what does that look like for me. So this has multiple facets and multiple reasons why I'm doing this right now. So all that to say, let's get into the video now. So if men got the shit together, then everything would be solved. And loaded question or a loaded statement, and it's something that I have turned over in my mind many, many times and tried to find loopholes for, or holes in that idea. And this is coming off of a more traditional archetypal sense of the word men, right? So I get that everyone has both parts of them inside of themselves, right? The masculine, feminine, whatever words you want to use. However, men, as a man, we are the embodiment of the masculine energy, that force on a cosmic level. And then the woman is the female embodiment of the feminine energy on a cosmic level. Okay? And men are the wielders and have dominion over the earth physically, right? You look at the Bible, Adam is charged to tend to the earth, to take care of it, to till its land, and to build on it and create. Okay, regardless of what you think of religion, that's just if I reference the Bible, by the way, it's probably going to be coming from a parable or archetypical reference. There's some aspects that I believe are true in the Bible. It's a much different conversation. But for this sake, Adam is given charge of the earth, right? So we're the dominions of the world. If you look at the world right now, it is run by men, meaning the infrastructure of this earth is upkept by men. Now, yes, there's outlier jobs here and there, women being plumbers or being in those worlds. But even the idea that there wasn't equal opportunity for that to be the case a long time ago, the last 50 years has proven that women don't want those jobs, and that's okay. I don't think they should. They wouldn't be able to do them to the same capacity, right? Just the same way that the majority of nannies are women. There's a reason for that. That's more in line with natural their natural uh, disposition. Okay, so if that's the case, okay, that men are the dominions of this plane, and also naturally we're going to be ideally more grounded in this reality. Okay, 3D, we are designed and love to protect and to provide and to produce things and to create. Okay, and one more thing I'll say to that is whenever I make these statements, does not mean women can't do these things. Again, just want to clarify that. So that's we are designed to produce and to create and to provide on a physical level. That's why we're bigger, stronger, faster. We always will be, and that's how it is. Okay. So if you look at our world nowadays and what has been done over the last, call it 50 years, 60 years, the massive decline in masculinity, and I put that in quotations because that's, there's toxic masculinity. It never used to be like a question or like something I believe that was hard to find. I think there's a lot of reasons in regards to the lack of initiation, a lack of elders guiding men, right? Because the way that men evolve is being around other men and being shown and demonstrated that this is how you show up in the world, right? Hunting, fighting, okay? A woman's initiation is very different than men's. And if you look at our culture, most men have never gone on a hunt. They were not initiated as a teenager in some way, shape, or form by their fathers or by the men in that village, okay? And that does something to your psyche. Most men have been raised by women. As someone who was mainly raised by my mom and was around my sisters a lot, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that greatly affected my development and the way that I've been able to show up in the world. It took me a long time and a lot of different things that I had to do to get to who I am now as a man. And I'm thankful for that experience. But if that was most people that grow up in those situations don't even think about, oh, there's another way to do this. There's like, why are we treating men the same way that we treat women? And I believe, and not to get into the conspiracy side of it, right? But whoever they is have done a great job at dismantling the natural yin and yang framework that is our society, I believe. And it's really sad because when I was younger and I, left my childhood home, moved to a different city, and I started to see that the issues that I experienced as a child were not unique to mine in the sense that it wasn't just the religious fundamentalist Christian cult upbringing that I grew up in, but like society as a whole was not doing very well on the like masculine leadership front. And so I started to think about that for a minute. I was like, okay, how are men wired, right? So men, we are driven greatly, and I mean greatly, yes, bud, by sex, power, and money. Those three things. And those, if you think about it, are attached to providing and protecting. And so look at how those have been targeted in society, right? So we'll touch on sex first. From the very early age, I didn't watch cartoons growing up really, just because it's not something I did as a child. But if you look at Disney movies, if you look at kid shows, the over-sexualization of those shows is really interesting to think about. And then you bring that up to adolescence, you have the porn industry, you have also just movies and adult media in general, which is a massive, massive industry. Think about why, like if you see that that's happening, okay, and there's stats and you can do little deep dive on that part of the world if you want to see what is going on that front, because it's so crazy. This is not even a moral conversation. I'm not bringing morality into, like, is porn bad? Is sex before marriage bad? I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about is how that bypasses one of the biggest, if not the biggest, driver that men have. So there's been wars that have lasted years fighting over women. Okay? Like, straight up. The wisest man in the Bible, King Solomon, was, and one of his weaknesses was women. The strongest man in the Bible, Samson, his downfall was because of a woman. So the feminine power and beauty is incredibly powerful. Wielded incorrectly, or wielded, in this case, in a very unhealthy way, it's detrimental. Because, so that's one component, right? So you've then bypassed two things. If you're watching pornography, or if you're not in control of that part of your life, you are bypassing everything in between your pelvic floor and your brain, which that's where your feeling is, that's where your gut, that's where all the other sensations are. And then you're also bypassing, like, you're going right to the visual. So again, as a man, you are able to, it's like junk food basically, right? And again, don't care what your thoughts are on a moral basis. It's not what we're talking about. It's more just thinking about what that does to your psyche and your drive to then become somebody. Just a functioning person in society. Not even someone like with big goals, just like, do you even want to wake up and go to work? Okay. So there's that. And when that started to where it is now, I believe that's one of the big correlations. So there's that. There is, what other things I said? Okay, wanting to, like, be of service and just protect people in general, right? Back, I think, in the 60s, maybe the 50s, I need to fact check those dates. Two things happened in America. One, there was no longer a mandatory draft. And that was one of the ways that men were initiated and could be of service and to gain skills and to push themselves and to see what they were made of, was in the military. And that I feel like is an older tradition than just in the US, right? Like, tribes, you go to war, you protect your village. And in that same vein, the pill was invented and became mainstream. And so then the women's initiation that usually happens of motherhood in their teens, or sorry, late teens, early 20s, was also gone. So those two things, I think, was a very interesting domino that was tipped over 50, 60 years ago. And now we're seeing some of the repercussions of that. So video games is another component of this. As men, we are designed to conquer and create. Okay? War, that's the whole thing. Business, you're trying to compete. You're seeing sports, why we love sports so much. Okay? Our brains do not know the difference from imagining something and actually going out and achieving it. This is also why pornography is very dangerous for men specifically, because you think you're doing something, you think you're participating in something, when in actuality you're not. Same with video games. This is why I don't really play video games. I'm not necessarily against them, like, I can never touch one. There's not a fear around it, but just having an awareness of what is it doing to your brain. Now, if you are someone in life where you feel completely satisfied with what you've created and the dreams you have, and there's nothing pulling you, right? Like, you're not some lazy person in your mom's basement. Cool. I'm not saying you shouldn't play video games, but I think just being told and giving yourself the full terms and conditions of what this is doing to your brain as a young man, okay, then you're not going to want to go start a business. You're not going to want to go just try to create something, see what you're made of, right? That is hardwired into our brains as men. I think for again, some of this is interchangeable, but for men, that's why you look at, even as a young boy, you're trying to see how high you can jump or how fast you can run, or you're competing, you're making gains, right? That's inside of us always, even as you get older. That's not gone. It just translates to how that looks. Okay, that could become into business, whatever it is. And then you also have the food and lack of fitness component. And this is where I think toxic masculinity, that whole word being thrown around, what is associated with when it comes to strength, aggression, dominance, um, all of those words that I believe are not bad. And I think if, yes, there are examples and there are situations where men have abused that power, that's not new for starters. Welcome to the earth. Okay. But to demonize all of that, and this is, I can speak to this because as someone who grew up all of my adult life, I'm 30 years old, so my whole life feeling this polarity of what I feel desire and pulled to as a man, what I want to do, how I want to show up in the world, and then looking and seeing that that's not really accepted. That's not really okay to talk about or to do. And that's just really interesting because I'm like, then you have the flip side of that where society, especially women, want men to be strong or to be dominating in the world, right? You look at what the kind of men that women want, and this is again factual, look this up. It's always the men like the 1-2% that are very successful. For them to get to that, the things they had to do, how they had to show up, will go exactly counter to what that narrative is of toxic masculinity. Okay? So, in that same vein, I believe that if a woman is shown, or even as a society, like they're always testing men. Women are always testing men. I can, growing up with sisters, it's true, and it's really that's one of the ways we evolve as men, because they don't even know they're doing it, because they are the way they see the world is different than us. So they're testing and seeing what they can get away with, and it's not in a like a mischievous way. Maybe sometimes it can be in a playful way, but it's more so like they're testing boundaries from a safety point of view. So if they can push your boundary in some minuscule way, then they're not going to trust you when push comes to shove with children or their own safety. Does that make sense? And so if I look at our world now, I believe a big part of why we're in the predicament that we are in is because men don't have a spine and have not said, no, I'm drawing the line here. This whole feminist movement is fucking bullshit. Do some research on that. That'll be a different video. But you look at who actually started those movements and all of the ideologies that a lot of these things have come from. They're pretty horrible people. And this is where, as a man, I understand the the difference of the way that we are wired as men and the way that women are wired. What I mean by that is women are naturally community and like relationally and emotionally based. Okay. And we need that on so many fronts. Thankful to God for them, right? But if we let that kind of energy run a society, you will get what we have right now, where it is very welcoming to everyone. There's no rule. Like it's just chaos. It's fucking chaos. And this is where without a grounding anchor to be like, yo, I get the concept as as a concept, but let's bring it down to reality. What are you actually wanting in this moment? What are we actually trying to achieve with equality or whatever it is? So we'll get back to what if men get their shit together. Okay. So in all of this, right? If you're not in control of your sexual energy, which is also your creation energy as a man, same for women, but it's different for a man. That is literally the shit that makes children. Okay? And there's so many ancient teachings when it comes to that part of your life and going up your spine, that being what opens your mind up to ideas and your connection to God, right? And that's a you don't even have to get to that point, right? I'm not saying that everyone should then become a monk and just practice certain kinds of yoga forever. It's not that. But see the correlation of why is that targeted so heavily? Think about that for a minute. And then if that is targeted so heavily, why? Because if you have a group of people that do not have control of the energy that created them and then that creates their reality, and then you add on top of that that they think they're achieving things through video games or through just the internet in general, right? The metaverse and all of that. And then you take away their physicality and the power, the physical power that men hold in their DNA. you will then can collapse society. Because women will never be strong enough physically to overpower men. So we have to do it to ourselves. It has to be self-inflicted. And this is where, for those of you that have seen Inception, it feels like Inception to a certain degree. What I mean by that is Inception, for those of you who don't know, basically, if I tell you right now, think of a pink elephant, and you are then thinking of a pink elephant, but you can see where the idea came from. You can trace its origin. And it talks about this in the movie. True inception is almost impossible to fake because it involves having the subject think that they thought of that idea. So when it comes to the mass, I would say, castration of men on an energetic level, it's self-inflicted, but you don't realize that it's not. And what I mean by that is you have not been prepared or warned about some of these things and realize, okay, you can put over here. You can, option A is play video games, do all the drugs, do like there's no rules, kind of do whatever you want, right? You can do that. There's no one saying you can't. But then option B is so much better. It's like become a healthy, powerful, successful individual that changes the world in your own right, whatever that is for you. And this in between space right here, only you know what fills that. So as you start to cultivate a healthy body, once you start to cultivate and learn how to use your sexual energy in a healthy way, once you start to actually at least try to achieve things in your everyday life, right? I'm not saying it has to be some astronomical thing, but instead of playing video games till 3 in the morning, try something else. Things will start to be revealed to you. You'll start to see things clearer, maybe for the first time ever. And that gap of from A to B will be made clear. Like, oh my God. Once your body is at a stage of being present with yourself, the world will change. So, there's other big categories when it comes to that. Those three, I would say, are some of the biggest ones because they cascade to everything else, cascade to literally everything else. Because then, when you're able to show up as an individual who knows who he is, because another part of this is the lack of belief systems or values that I see men have or that they don't have. And some of this is really unfortunate in regards to no one teaches us this, right? There's a lack of elders. And there's this book called King, Lover, Warrior, Magician. And it basically talks about how there's those four archetypes in every man. If you're a man or even a woman, I highly recommend reading that book. And one of the things that it talks about in that book, and I think there's other literature on this as well. I haven't, because I remember hearing this prior to reading that book, where we've entered the age of the individual. And I think that's very interesting. And what I interpret that to be is yes, ideally you have shamans, you have elders, and there are certain parts of the world where that is the case. You can go have a rite of passage, you can go do something to that effect, right? But the majority of people say if you don't have that, like what do you do? And that wasn't my situation. Like, what do you do if you don't have some shaman to go to? And I believe there's certain actions that can be taken, small or big, to help activate some of this information inside your body. So that could be going on I think the physicality part is huge for men. This is why the military, I believe, regardless of what you think of the military as an organization, it was very helpful because it gave men a before and after. So where I went to school, it was a military styled school. And I ended up leaving there eventually after a couple of years. I did my own training for a year, which was amazing. There was boot camp, which our boot camp was more difficult than the military's because it was the way we ran it. We would have guys come to our boot camp prior to going to the Marines or whatever, and then they would like excel exponentially more because they already had gone through something worse. And so after I finished my year of training, I went in with I was like 275 pounds, had never really gotten into weightlifting or learned about the physicality that a man can have. Through that first year of training, I went through basic training, dropped like 50 pounds almost immediately, which I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty doable. Um, and then I went and learned, I became a firefighter, an EMT, tech rescue, which is like a rope system, so saving people off of like cliffs and buildings and whatnot, right? And so in that first year, the transformation that happened and the correlation between being of service to the world, right? I was still wanting to be a firefighter at that point. Um, the physicality, being able to do some wild, cool shit during that year. And then I was able to then go back and help with the leadership side of basic training for about 2 years. And during those 2 years, seeing boys become men. Now, obviously, there's so much more to becoming a man than just like going through basic. But that first stage, that first, like, some of these kids that would come in at 17, 18 years old, never left home before, very small, scrawny, stream bean type kids, right? And then I would see them transform into like someone who actually knew how to do something. And it was so cool to see, okay, that's needed. So I say a lot to say, if you don't do something like that, how do you do that to yourself? How do you put yourself through some form of an initiation? Because I believe that in that initiation, things are woken up in your body where you're then shown, like, wait a minute, I can kind of go for it. I can do whatever. Because if we are made in the image of God, and all cultures call it this, the creator, we are a creator. We create things. We create our reality. We create what we do. And this goes back to those few things that I mentioned, right? If those things are then attacked through the mediums that we discussed, you're then outsourcing your creativity, your energy, your sense of success, your physicality to something else, which is like you're basically coming down to earth to have this experience and to be of service to God in some way. If you're watching this, I'm guessing. And if you are not seeing those two connected, you need to realize that. Like, you need to truly, truly realize that there's no separation of those two things at all. Now, yes, there's the moral side of the conversation, which is a little bit different, but I would argue that this is almost more important than a moral conversation, because this is not really a moral issue, I don't believe. I believe it's more a spiritual and energetic issue. Because, hello, my cat Jasper, if you can see him. What do you think, dude? Yeah. Please don't knock it over. He's just inspecting. You got to have the inspector of my gear once in a while by master assistant. Um, because so here's where if men were taught those things in high school, right? Because you have testosterone fucking through the roof when you're like 12 years old, 13 years old. So once you realize and once you come to the understanding that, okay, this is not bad, this is not wrong, this is a natural part of growing up and becoming a man, how do I channel that? How do I learn to use this power I've been given as a human and as a young man? Now, let's just create this little world, right, where that happens. Okay, men figure those things out. They learn how to utilize and cultivate their emotion. I don't like to say control their emotions, because control feels like a rough sensation, like it's forceful. Because the level of emotion that men have, I would say, is equal, if not the same or more sometimes than what women experience. It's just different how we need to express it. We have a lot of anger, we have a lot of rage. Okay, so even being taught that at a very young age creates safety. And I believe that most of the issues that we see in the world would be solved, again, if men could stand up. And what I mean by that is, if those things that we just mentioned are happening for you, your self confidence, your sense of self won't be there. And so you won't have the literal spine to be like, hold up, this is fucked. Whatever it is, it could be government issues, it could be public service, it could be church issues, whatever you feel pissed off about, or if there's injustice, whatever it is. But until you have gotten to a point where you can actually stand on your own 2 feet with some confidence and some gusto, it will come through energetically. It will literally come through whatever you end up doing. And I've seen this in my own life over the last 10 to 12 years as I've kind of did a little experiment on myself, to be honest, and this will kind of come out a little bit as I make these videos, where I would track and notice how I would show up if I use my energy in a different way, if I wasn't training properly, if I was doing other things to think that I was succeeding at something, right? I never really played video games too much, but there's other ways you can kind of trick yourself. Where social media is a big one, because you're watching someone else do something and you're getting the same hit of like, oh, like I'm doing that too, right? Even though you're fucking not. Okay. So if men then were able to see an issue in the world, let's take politics for example. I'm not trying to talk about politics, but just use this as an example. Where if 200, say 200 men, embodied, clear, value-driven men, march on the Capitol. I don't know what's coming to mind. Not in a violent way, but in like, we're not going to stand for this. We aren't going to, the way you're taking care of our children or not taking care of them, the way you're not doing X, Y, and Z, all of it. Like it wouldn't be allowed. If the organization and the embodiment of true masculinity is life changing for everyone involved, for men and for women, because then women probably wouldn't even want to work, to be honest, because they have a whole different role in this beautiful yin yang situation where we are able to protect and provide properly, right? Whether that be with our sisters, our mothers, the community as a whole, right? And then women are then able to take off to the fucking stars with their emotional wildness and pull that information from us for us. And then we co-create that. This is one of the other things that I see is the issue when it comes that's not the right word, not issue. When I hear women say, "Oh, I want X, Y, and Z from a man," right? 6 figures, this house, he has to look like this, whatever it may be, which is totally fine. You can ask for those things. One of the things that I don't see people connecting, as a man, we are hardwired to give a woman whatever she wants. But in that, we gain an indescribable level of energy from the support and nourishment from our woman. And in that, you spiral upward to create the reality that she sees, that she's like, I want this garden. And I see this with my brother and sister-in-law. She'll have an idea about something and he'll go build it. Literally, it's the coolest thing to see. Because it's like it never ends. And so realizing that missing link, when a woman's looking for a man, assuming that he is what we just talked about, she's the missing link. Because as a man, if you ask a man, this is why if you go into a dude's house, right, it's pretty minimalistically decorated probably, right? Like my friends joke around me that I like no furniture, which I pretty much don't. I have very minimal furniture. Like it's functional. It works. Like I kind of makes me laugh, but it's like as a dude, now if I was married, it would be a different story because there is a level of me wanting to give that to my partner. Wow, my cat is just having the most fun. um, so that's one component of if men were able to then ground themselves to the point where women felt safe enough and could actually then be free to be like, okay, cool, right? And when the emotional cycles that a woman experiences, a grounded man, that will not scare him. Doesn't mean he'll tolerate certain behaviors. And that's where I think I see this, and we'll touch on this on the female side of this video at a later date, where I don't think most women could actually hold what they're asking. At least the people that I talk to, where they're wanting X, Y, and Z, I'm like, could you actually handle that level of accountability energetically to be held to that standard? Because women also have a very similar predicament where they are not shown the female version of what we're talking about. But we'll table that for a later date. So then let's fast forward 10 years to when people are married with kids. Again, that same man that we just described is then raising his sons in the practices what we just talked about, all the school shootings, to learn how to channel that rage and anger if they're not well, if they need to create something. He's then demonstrating to his children how to properly provide, take care of, and show up. How do you create a belief system? How do you create values? How do you navigate when shit hits the fan without losing your shit? Women are then shown self-respect and values that only men can bring, and that's again not a new concept. Doesn't mean that again women have a big role to play in this, but there's certain things that only a true man can bring to these situations. And I'm speaking on this, obviously, I don't have kids, I'm not married, so I'm not going to pretend to know what that's like. I'm more just speaking from someone who, from my experience growing up, seeing society, being a young man in the world right now, and trying to navigate some of this, pointing out some of these things that I see. So, again, not saying this is the only way. Part of this goal is to start this conversation, to be honest, and be like, is anyone else seeing this? Is anyone else thinking about some of these things? Because let's fast forward 50 years, 100 years. The level of disembodiment that will be in our society if this is not talked about on a massive scale is so concerning to me. And I'm not going to obviously yell and like rage in this video because I don't think that would be very effective. But like it's really frustrating and it's very interesting to see. Like I'm sure there's people that are doing some form of work on this. Maybe there's not, I don't know, and that's part of why I feel impelled or impelled. What word am I trying to think of? Compelled. There we go. Compelled to speak on this because if a man is in the situation, because some of what we touched on, I've experienced my own version of this, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's very difficult to get out of. It is so difficult to get out of. I've spent so much time and money and energy getting out of headspaces and addictions and ways of coming over things that like if you don't have a really strong internal drive or if something is not burning inside of you, you will give up. You will just be like, I don't even care. And that's really sad. But it's also very understandable. I get it. So I don't have any judgment towards those people. It's more so there's this gap, again, like we talked about a minute ago. This gap right here could be 5 years long. It could. It could be 10 years long for some people. And for some people, it could be the rest of their life. However, I would much rather spend 5 years, in my case, about 10 years, um, crossing that gap to just see what's over here, see what is even possible. Because I guarantee you, what you're imagining from A to B is a fraction of what you're actually capable of. But only when you have embodied and you've incorporated the mastering your body's energy and realizing how powerful it actually is, coupled with the goals and the dreams that you may have as a man. And then go ahead, bud, you can hop up. He just tried to get up and couldn't. Um, and then the physicality, they're like, let's go fucking tackle the world. Let me see how it feels to just be a dude. That's one of the best feelings ever. It is one of the best feelings ever as a man. And there is no field, I believe, and no arena of life that will not benefit you. Zero. And then I believe you're then like at a good starting point to be of service to the world. Not saying you can't before then, but before you're running at like 20%. If you don't have those areas, and even if you don't have them locked in completely, right? I'm not saying if you get healthy, you can never eat pizza again. I'm not saying that, but just you need to cultivate awareness, cultivate a level of internal attention of like, okay, why am I going to this? If I come home and I immediately go to my video games for 3 hours, what emotion or what am I trying to decompress from? Is it your job? It's like, cool, maybe your job should be looked at. Like maybe you should quit your job. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And if it's not that, go to something else. But that's where, again, going back to the idea of attention, which we've talked about, if you can't track that, so like for me, which is the thing of a recent example, I think it was last week, had a really stressful day, and I noticed a desire to like eat a bunch of food, and not like an exorbitant amount, but I was like, that's where my body went to try and cope with that uncomfortable feeling of stress, of uncertainty, of this uncomfortability in my body, of like, ew. So maybe go for a walk. I think I went for a walk, and that helped just to move. Now, you can still go for a walk and then maybe still eat something. I'm not saying you shouldn't, because what happens if you try to resist it in a disciplined way, you'll create more attraction to it, which is a wild duality. That's where you need to have discernment. Be like, okay, I'm tracking this. I know why I'm doing this right now. And welcome back, bud. But at least I'm aware. That's better than last time, right? Because here's the thing: when it comes to the original statement in this video, if men got the shit together, the world would be solved. If women are listening to this video, be like, yeah, it's all the men's fault. You're not hearing me. And then if the men hear this video and are not agreeing with this to some degree, two things. One, I'd be curious what your thoughts are about what I just shared. And then two, if it's not this, like we can't keep playing the blame game of as a man, it's like, oh well, there's no one worth marrying because of the feminist movement. They're all, yada yada yada. Like, cool. That may be true. It might be. First of all, world's fucking big. So there's people that are not in that world. But two, I don't care. That's not an excuse to be a bitch. I don't. And I think there's a level of coddling that is happening for men and for women in a really big way, which will be the downfall of our society if we do not call some people out. And I'm included in this, right? I'm not trying to be like I'm immune to any of these things. I'm definitely not. But we need to start the conversation and be like, okay, yes, these horrible things happen, these laws that have been passed, the way our society is at is pretty fucked. And yet at the same time, for me, that doesn't discourage me in a really, really weird way. Because I'm like, oh, well, it's super solvable. In my mind, this part of these videos is me to try to dump this out onto something so we can, hopefully come to a realization that this is very much so solvable. And this isn't even incorporating, came to mind, the whole AI situation, right? You add AI to this conversation in the sense of how that will affect the porn industry, that's going to be fucking wild. You add pornography and robotics and AI, Jesus Christ. I am shuddering at the thought of what a 5-year-old boy is going to experience in 10 years. He will have no desire to be married. Why? There's no need. Okay? You incorporate that same with video games, how immersive those worlds are, where it's like you're missing reality here. And that's, yes, we could be in a computer simulation already, which is a different conversation completely, but let's assume we're not for the sake of this. Those few drivers that are hardwired into our brain will be gone if we do not try and cultivate something to salvage it. And I am really honestly open to hearing what other people's thoughts are about this, because I'm not saying this is the only answer, but as someone who had a very long stretch of my life when it comes to not understanding sexuality, partly because of lack of education, being addicted to pornography for a very long time and not understanding how to cope with that. It's not talked about. Same with food. Food is a drug. Food is a drug. I don't care how you phrase it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't eat it. We need food, right? But understanding how to use it properly is just not taught, it's not talked about. And then your body, those two things, just those two things, the way that will then affect your body will affect your ability to see the world clearly, to hear God correctly, to understand how you want to show up in the world, how to manifest and create what you feel is on your heart, right? And this is where no one can tell you this. And I've said that before, but no one can tell you what to do. The only thing I believe that can be done is you to remove things that you actually know to be inhibiting your path forward. There's a verse in the Bible where it says it is better if you're what is it? If your hand caused you to stumble, cut it off, for it is better for you to enter the kingdom of heaven without it than for you to lose your whole body in hell. Something to that effect. And I didn't get that when I was younger, because what the fuck is that even talking about? As I've gotten older, regardless of what you think of heaven and hell, it's not the point. That idea is okay. Maybe your vice is video games, or the thing that you're thinking about, like, oh, maybe I should stop doing that. It is possible for that to creep into every other area of your life without you knowing it. And I'm not trying to like stretch something that can't be reached, but like I've seen it happen where people spend all of their free time all the time doing that and they have no life. It's like, okay, it's better for you to give that up and then to see what is possible than for you to continue living that way. And you could insert whatever thing you want to in that box, right? Could be food, could be sex, could be alcohol, whatever it is. And I think there's a level of self-discipline and uh, awareness to be able to be honest with yourself and pinpoint what those things are. And this goes back to the physicality part, where if you are the physical rite of passage that happens in basic training, or if you go into the desert for a couple of weeks, whatever it may be, your body goes through something and you're then shown on a physical level, wait a minute, I am more than what I think I am in this moment. And I remember one of the first times I experienced that, where I was like, wait a minute, oh, I can just like decide to go do something. One of the things that I did in my early 20s was I biked across America on a bicycle by myself with like no training. And I remember when I was doing that, I was 22, 23, I think. And when I was doing that, there was no thought in my mind, like, could I do this? How hard it was. There was just this internal calmness and decision of, well, yeah, this is happening. Like, I'm going to do this. What's going to stop me? You just keep biking one day at a time. And I remember when I would stay with people, or people would ask me about it, or whether it be when I was while I was doing it, or even since then, people will ask me about it. They were like, "Oh, wasn't it overwhelming? Wasn't it like super daunting?" Da da da. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was actually pretty fucking cool, because the whole quote of it's not about the destination, about the journey, right? So if that's the case, I'm like, well, then enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. So even in this, right, as you start to look at your life and you see like, wow, yeah, those few things that we talked about, I actually have no control over that part of my life. Like, cool, well, then just start like that. That simple awareness will then hopefully cascade in your own life, and you'll start to see how interconnected it is. There's no separation. You can't fucking separate it. It's not possible. And you'll then see, like, this is the physical part of it. Try to incorporate, give your body a chance to move some of that energy, right? Because as you start to not offload through unhealthy sexual expression or get the sense of accomplishment through video games, those two things specifically, you'll then have a surplus of energy start to fill up physically and energetically, and you'll then be like, what do I do with this? I don't know if you guys remember when you were kids, right, where you would want to go play outside for hours and hours and hours, and you would need to be dragged inside. Basically, it's how I was when I was, as a child. That's how I was. That's still possible. That doesn't go away. There's other parts of yourself, right? You have to be responsible. You have to have a job, I guess, and do all those things to like be a part of society and like be of service to the world. However, that vitality, that drive, that's what's being taken. Your attention, your energy is being taken without your consent, because no one told you that's what the price is. If something is free, I didn't come up with this, if something is free, you are the product. That's fucking wild. Or if something's really, really cheap, think about that. Like, why is this, like, what's the cost, right? Say a video game is $30. I don't know how much they are, but say they're $30. That one video game could have hundreds of hours of time you could spend in that game. And someone can come around and take that game or that console and snap it in half, and your accomplishments are out the window. And so your brain thinks you just conquered the fucking new world. in actuality, you haven't done anything. And I think the world is starving for creativity, for creation in general, especially for grounded, present men. And I say this as a young man. There is still so much that I am trying to figure out and trying to create, to be honest. And those few things that I shared are huge linchpins that I have seen in my own life and in society as a whole. Now, yes, again, in a perfect world, you have shamans, you have uh, elders to walk you through that. But for the everyday person, that's not a reality for them. And that's really sad. And I am curious to see where this will go if enough of us don't like snap out of it. Because if we don't figure this out now, fast forward 50 years, like I don't know if you guys have seen Blade Runner, but like Blade Runner, that, like that kind of world. I don't say that from a place of fear, but even in movies, I don't know if you guys watch movies or not, but say like Divergent, right? Or The Hunger Games, or all of those. Like I grew up watching those movies and reading those books, and you always root for the Katniss Everdeen or the character like Four or whatever it is to make a difference or to do something. And I'm like, well, we're that age bracket now. Like, who else is gonna? The older I've gotten, the more that I've seen the world and seen how things are done. I'm like, most people that end up doing something just kind of start and try and pull the pieces together and be like, hey, what's working, what's not working. This for sure is not working. It's fucking up so much. It's kind of my goal in some of this, and to hopefully start a conversation with men and women too. Like, if you guys have thoughts on this, in the sense of, like, if women are watching this, I would be curious from the female point of view what your guys' thoughts are on this, and also if you have men in your life that you think fit this category, send them this, talk about it with them, be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And then also ask yourselves, as the woman, what is your role in this? It takes two to tango. Okay, so when it comes to what you're wanting and then what you tolerate, this goes for both men and women, take some accountability, take some ownership. And that'll be a different video of the idea of accountability and ownership on an individual and as a collective level, because that's another huge thing where it's not really needed right now. And that's the the uh, the price of that will be bigger than I think people realize, to be honest, from my point of view. I think that's all I got for tonight. If there's anything else around this, yeah, I guess one last thing would be like this to me. I think if you feel angry about this, that's a good sign, in my opinion. Just don't let the anger. I'm really pissed about this, to be honest. It may not be coming through greatly in this video, but mainly because I've gotten good at channeling it and moving it in effective ways to hopefully make a difference, whether it be through stuff like this, writing, moving my body, realizing that anger and those heavy emotions unchecked will wreak havoc on your body. So, in my experience, anger is your body telling you that you've been disrespected in some way or that something's off. So if I feel angry towards what we're talking about, I think that's a good thing. That means A, that I'm alive, and it's like, yeah, this actually is pretty fucked. Let's think about this for a minute, see what's going on. But then this is where having the body to hold that much emotion without being reactive takes time. And it also takes awareness for you to be able to be like, wow, I feel pissed about this. Why? Am I pissed about that person? Like, track it. Try and do some inner dialogue with yourself. But I feel very hopeful, to be honest, that there will be a point where hopefully we can see behind this curtain that has been put before us, where it's not actually what we think it is, and it's not what we want as a society, and even as an individual, because it starts with the individual. That's, I think people underestimate the power of the individual, to be honest. Like, if any of this is interesting to you, it's like, I my goal in this is not to share what I'm thinking and have someone adopt all that I said. My goal in this is to hopefully strike some internal chord or poke some little tiny seed inside of you, and then it sprouts its own fucking garden. That's it. Because that's what's trying to be silenced or suppressed through the things we just mentioned as men. And the capacity that men have to create is incredible. The fact that men are still creating at the level they are, with all that we've been talking about, should tell you what we're capable of. And being respected and appreciated for what we've created, I think is also another big component that has a lot of men be like, well, why? And for me, the answer that I've come to realize is I do not. What's the verse in the Bible? Remember, my mom would say this all the time. It's like, do all that you do as unto the Lord, not unto men. I think realizing that what I do when I go to work, even when I do this, it's not for you. It's not. And that took me a little while to realize or to come to terms with and be like, yes, it's for you in the sense that you're the one watching it, but it's for something much higher than that. And I feel appreciated and accepted, and I'm seen at a higher level. And with that higher level of recognition, yes, appreciation, gratitude, recognition from the human plane is amazing. But I do not need it. And in that, if a man and a woman can get to that point on the individual level, there's no limit, because you're not looking for validation. Now, yes, I'm not saying I don't appreciate that, but that's not the main source of your support. And that's a really fun spot to be in, because you're co-creating with God. You're like, okay, this makes no sense. I don't know how qualified I am for this. Yada, yada, yada. All the thoughts, right? Like, well, if he says this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now, then like, let's fucking ride and just see what happens. Because one or two options, as I've wrestled with that and how I have wrestled with that concept, or because there's a whole side of that, right? Like, am I doing it for God? Yada yada. It's like, okay, if that's just all in my own mind, cool. Maybe I'm doing a placebo effect in my own brain where this is all made up, but it still works. Or if it is real, fuck yeah. Either option, I win. In the sense it helps. It feels on a system level. My body resonates with that way more than like me doing it for someone else. Because if I'm doing it for someone else, then it is attached to that person's word or approval or whatever it is, which is, I can't control that. I can't necessarily control God's either, but it's grounded in something way deeper than someone's words. And so that's something for you guys to think about too, is in what we just talked about, as you become more aware, as you start to cultivate what values you have, what is your belief system, what is your code of conduct, whatever word, right? There's a million different ways to come up with that sentence. What is it? Because there will be times in life, you haven't experienced it already, you will, where the thing you are building your foundation, like your life is going to blow up in some way. Family member's going to die, you're going to lose a job, you're going to break off an engagement or a marriage, whatever it is, right? And you're going to need something that is beyond you. And this gets into, you know, are you separate from God? Are you not? That'll be probably a different video, to be honest. Um, but I think it's really important. And unfortunately, most of those belief systems are attached to religion. So this is where deconstruction is a huge component of this. At least it has been for me. Where coming up with your belief system, or like cultivating, like, okay, what do you believe? Why do you believe that? Let's test it in everyday life. And that in and of itself for me is a fucking fun process, because like, what else are you gonna do if you don't know what you believe? Again, holding strong beliefs loosely. Holding it with an open hand. Like, I believe this. I'll die on this hill until someone shows me convincing evidence otherwise. And if someone shows me something two things are going to happen. Either it's going to blow this the fuck up, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to replace this with something else, or it's going to hit this, and this will become even stronger. Because it's like, wow, I hear what you're saying, totally makes sense, doesn't resonate with where I feel myself going. But again, that part of your life, that belief system that we're talking about, goes back to your fucking spine, your sexual energy, your body's system, your desire to even aim for your own belief system. There's people that I talk to and they're like, they don't really care what they don't have a belief system. I'm like, how are you fucking functioning? Like, no wonder you don't care, because you haven't cultivated something. And we'll probably get into that at a later date as far as how to do that, how to create your code of conduct, your values, right? How religion plays a part in this whole conversation, because it plays a big one on a societal level. Um, yeah, I think that's it for now. Hope this was helpful. I'm really excited to keep talking about some of these concepts. This was by no means the full breadth of that idea of if men get their shit together, the world will be solved. These are some of the first ones I wanted to touch on. And until something is proven otherwise, I still stand by that belief. I really think that men have an opportunity to turn this around in a way where if men want to be leaders, it's not going to be easy. And some of this that I'm talking about, I might not see in my lifetime. It may not come to the fruition that I see in my brain for 50 years. I don't know. But just looking at history, looking at how we're wired on a physical, energetic, and spiritual level, and what's happening in our world, these first few things that we touched on, I believe, are a huge component for how men's brains work, how it's being targeted, and then how that is causing the rest of society, men, women, children, to suffer for it, to be honest. So, much love to you all. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.